Today, it's great to chat with Loch Kelly on the podcast. Loch is an author, meditation teacher, psychotherapist, and founder of the nonprofit Open Hearted Awareness Institute. Loch teaches in a non-sectarian human being lineage using an adult education style based in the earliest non-dual wisdom traditions, modern science, and psychotherapy. Loch's work is to help people access awakening as the next natural stage of human development. He offers in-person retreats, workshops, and online video and audio courses, and he has served on the New York Insight Teachers Council. Loch, I'm so glad we can finally make time to chat today.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. This is really fun. Looking forward.
Me too. There's lots of different avenues to go with this, but I thought we could start if you could just offer our listeners a little bit about your own background and some of your maybe most seminal teachers in this path that you've been on.
Yeah, well, in some ways, I'm really similar to Maslow. I've been trying to put together the science and the psychology, and then wondering what these peak experiences are, what these spiritual experiences are. They spiritual? Are they consciousness experience? So early on from childhood, I would have these what I call glimpses, or I would start by saying maybe what I call now peak experiences. I call them PEEK. So they're actually peaks into what's already here and what's already awake and already who I've always been. Yeah,
I really like that.
So I would have them in sports. I would have them in nature. I would have them, after kind of an intense emotional experience of loss, and so it just led me to feel like, okay, so this is so interesting. Why isn't everyone talking about this? So I thought, well, I guess I can find out more. And it led me, after going and teaching, I taught high school for a couple of years after college, and then went to graduate school at Columbia University with a joint degree program in clinical social work and comparative religion. And I went off on a fellowship to Sri Lanka, India, and Nepal, and did a long period of study at a university there, and then up in the monasteries, and then sat, bunch of 10-day retreats and 21-day retreat and 5-day retreats, and really got a good in-depth experience of kind of the Theravada insight meditation Vipassana tradition. And then I went up north and ended up with a teacher in the Tibetan tradition whose name was Toku Urgyen Rinpoche, and going up to his hut in the Himalayas, and then giving a little talk, and then within 3 minutes of his pointing out instruction, I felt the same way I did at the end of a 10-day retreat.
Wow, that's exciting. Wow.
Yeah, and the same teacher, Sam Harris, studied with him as well. Having had this experience of meditation and studying the tradition, and then getting this immediate shift, what could be called, is it a peak experience, or is it a PEAK experience, or is it a PEEK? And they were saying, this is already here. You're not creating it. It's not a meditation state. You're actually walking around in a hypnotic state, and you're dehypnotizing yourself back to your natural condition, to the nature of mind and the nature of your identity. So with that as the kind of hypothesis, I continued to try these practices there. And that second day, I just had this experience where I was crying and laughing and just feeling like, oh my God, could it be this simple? Could it be this close? Could it be this just awesome and connected? And not only am I calm, but I'm, feel creative and connected to everyone else in the world. It's not just the absence, it's the presence and the fullness of being a full human being, even if I'm having emotions or thoughts. There's just this greater capacity of identity and mind that just made me feel like, okay, whatever this is what I'm going to do with my life, is figure out how to experience this. And then immediately I felt like, and I want to share it with people if I can figure it out. So
And
yeah,
sure. Go on.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So I went back, and instead of like joining a monastery there, which was the thought, okay, well, should I do this in depth? But it just felt like, oh, I can do this within minutes anywhere. So let me go back and finish this joint degree. And at that time in New York City, there was a lot of homelessness. And so I started soup kitchens and shelters and worked in psychiatry as a clinical psychiatric social worker, inpatient, and then psych emergency room, and then 5 years outpatient psych. So I got both the kind of wisdom traditions, consciousness, and then I worked with people who were Axis 1 diagnosis clients, and started to adapt a kind of what I call effortless mindfulness or non-dual mindfulness version of therapy with all people. Yeah.
Well, that is really cool. There is a dearth of integration between the psychological literature and I don't even know what to call that other world. The mindful. Some people would say the woo-woo world, but I don't want to be disrespectful.
that would be the scientist or the psychology world. So so I would say the meditative or the
meditative. Yeah.
I think the word I would use is consciousness, because as we'll see when we discuss some of your work and my work, that it's not just about the emotion or the personality or the attitude that we're adjusting, but we're adjusting the consciousness to which it's all appearing.
Well, this is the thing that's so interesting, because in the I'm a cognitive scientist, so I'm fascinated with the mind, brain, consciousness. But if you read those journal articles and then you put that down and you go and listen to even people like you, there's a different lexicon.
Yes.
There's a different language being used, and what I'd love to, I want to map it all. There must be the same phenomenon. It's not like we're talking about different. It's humans are humans. So
that's right. So we could play with that. I mean, I'm glad one of the words to play with is, the whole realm of self and ego, selflessness, self-transcendence. Self. So at some point you and I can go through that, and they're very distinct, and it all actually works together. That's one of my interest, was to bring them together and to show that it is human experience, and that when you make those fine distinctions, you're freed of this kind of being caught in a dualistic, like, I've got to get rid of myself, I've got to transcend my ego. That's what transcendence means. I'm beyond it, and you realize, oh no, that's a part of me that's an ego function that thought it was an ego identity, and now there's something greater than that that's aware of that, and then you aren't, it's not an either or.
Well, this is great. Let's build up. Let's build up to it then. Let's take this piece by piece, or else I'll get overwhelmed. I don't know. You probably won't, but I will. Let's take it piecemeal. So you use phrases. Let's even just start with the phrase awake awareness.
Right.
What does that mean?
Okay, so that's now. So we've jumped all the way to the biggest.
Oh, did we? Oh, maybe we shouldn't start there then. Should we start with local awareness? What do you think we should start with? Yeah.
Well, so I can start there. So awake awareness is a word that's translated from Tibetan word rigpa, which means nature of mind. And there's a word in Sanskrit called turiya, and it is translated often as pure awareness. So it means the consciousness prior to a child learning to use words and concepts. So it has a primordial, and then a preverbal, just consciousness, and then it has a wisdom dimension that's beyond thought, and that is aware of thought. So when you're identified with thought and then you step back to a mindful witness, you're in kind of mindful awareness. But then if you do this non-dual practice, what you do is you actually look to see who's behind that mindful witness, who's behind the camera, and you can open to this feeling of this more spacious, vast awareness that in itself feels alert, but isn't orienting to thought, to know. So that in Buddhism, thinking is considered the sixth sense. So we have our five senses input, and thought is arising like sound, but it's an internal experience arising to who or to what. So it rises to this non-conceptual, alert feeling of just being aware. And you could move your hand from here, or you could use thought, but you don't need to think about it. So
this is really interesting.
Yeah.
I want to wrap my head fully around this. It's like meditation without a meditator is what it sounds like you're saying. And this is something that's a little bit different than the kind of meditation I learned in like an 8-week MBSR course. You know, so let's compare and contrast. I'm such a nerd, but let's between kind of in the MBSR practice, I've done it twice now. I've taken the MBSR course. It's significantly helped my anxiety. I can definitely say that. And in that kind of practice, we very much focused on returning to the breath, and also there was a bit of open monitoring meditation, which I'd love to see how that maps onto what you're talking about, where this kind of open awareness of sort of whatever arises without trying to grasp for it or hold on to it, just like being really just aware of it. But I feel like what you're describing is something it's different than all of that. And I really want to wrap my head around that. It's kind of like tapping into a certain force field of consciousness that's lacking content and concepts, and you're tapping into it in a way that is effortless, and you're not even like attempting to shine your spotlight of attention on it. Right. You're not even trying to do that. So I really want to get into this. I want to get in it. I want to get in it. Yeah.
So let me use a few concepts from psychology and also people's experience who may be listening, that in some ways it's what people do in their free time as something they love. They do it to get out of the thought-based knowing and into a more awareness-based, interconnected, embodied, a type of flow consciousness. So I actually divide flow state into two types, which is kind of my own thing. One I call absorbed flow, where you enter into a very concentrated place, or you're involved in a task and you look up and 2 hours have gone by. So I call that absorbed. And then the second is panoramic flow. So like a musician playing could be an absorbed flow, but if they're in an orchestra, they are aware of everyone in the orchestra that they're totally in tune with. They're aware of the audience. They're not self-referencing. They're using implicit memory rather than self-reference. They're in the now, which means time isn't being referenced. There's a sense of flow, and there's an ecstasy or bliss in the activity itself. And they're not, just like if you were typing, you don't think about typing, you just type. You're not using thought to remember the keys. You're in a kind of trusting, awareness-based mode. So this this kind of awareness is available, and people know it, but they don't know they know it because it's not on our psychological map.
I'd like to take a moment to talk about our sponsor, BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? For quite a lot of us right now during this coronavirus pandemic, we are struggling with our most fundamental basic needs, such as our needs for security, connection, and opportunities to master our work. I think all of us could use some therapy right now. I know I sure could, which is why I've really been enjoying working with a professional therapist at BetterHelp so I can realize the best version of myself even under the current circumstances. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating with your therapist in just under 48 hours. Note that it's not a crisis line and it's not self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online. There's a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. In fact, the service is available for clients worldwide. What I really like about BetterHelp is that you can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as you often have to do with traditional therapy. BetterHelp is really committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily. Here's a recent one. Camilla helped me turn my life around. Everything has been so positive for me since our first session. Deep gratitude. I'm pleased to announce a special offer for listeners of the Psychology Podcast. You can get 10% off your first month of professional counseling by going to betterhelp.com/psychpodcast. That's BetterHelp/psychpodcast. Join the over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Okay, now back to the show. Wow, so you're not even aware of the process that you're going through to produce something?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
You're actually
so in it that you're not even aware of what you're doing?
And you're looking from it is why you can't see it. But
wow. Is this related to, because you could take this to the extreme and it starts sounding crazy, like this woman who came up to you and said that she went to the supermarket and she doesn't remember shopping at all, but she just saw the basket and you asked, well, do you like the stuff that you picked? Is it like how far would you take it that far?
No, because that I think I even used as an example of somebody who's more spaced out than
right.
in awake consciousness. Yeah,
good,
that was the example, that people come to me thinking they're in this, but they're not. No, it's more like so somebody, like, let's say, I'll give you a couple examples. So let's say if anyone just you can use your imagination or memory. You just step out of your car and you're going to take a nice walk in the woods. Step out of your car, you have activity, you close the car, you walk a couple feet, then you walk into the woods. As soon as you walk in, you drop. So your consciousness drops and opens and connects, and you just now are in this feeling that everyone knows when they're in nature of, what you could call a peak experience, but I would call it an actual more natural state of consciousness rather than self-referencing or self-consciousness, where you're thinking about what am I doing next, where am I going, where you're identified with thought, you're in a spacious and pervasive, interconnected, but you don't know it. You just think, oh, the woods made me do it, or you go on a walk with a friend and you laugh, oh, it's the friends. So what I'm saying is that this is you can be happy for no reason, without cause, that this awareness is here and can be intentionally accessed without a trigger or without a person, place, or thing that most people use as their doorway.
Can you access it on demand? Have you gotten to that point?
On demand, yeah.
I mean, how many years do I have to practice this before I can access it on demand?
Okay, well, let's. You ready to try it now?
I listened to I did all your guided meditations that are on your website, and trying to really understand like what the experience is and how it differs from like other kind of meditations I've done.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to do this with you right now. So I'm ready.
Yeah. So I'll say a little bit. I'll give the second part of the answer, which is that that this teacher who I met, Toka Ergin, said there's two kinds of mindfulness: deliberate mindfulness and effortless mindfulness. So what you learned in MBSR and most types of mindfulness are deliberate. So you use your attentional system to focus on your breath, and then you open to a mindful witness, and then you can look at contents of consciousness. But you're focused, you're pulling back the camera, you're focusing the camera of the small self, which actually, in terms of neuroscience, the research shows that what you're doing is you're putting on your task mode network of your brain, and you're repressing your default mode network. And the reason you get calm is because they're no longer alternating, but only one is on. So as soon as you get up, you're a little calmer, but then it just comes back again. And this research, same research, I can give you the study that studied this non-dual meditation. I was one of the subjects in with this guy, Josipovic at NYU.
Oh, I know him. I was at NYU. He was a colleague of mine.
Zoran? Yeah.
He was a colleague of mine when I was at NYU.
Yeah. So he did the study, and I was in the fMRI and did this kind of balanced awareness. What happens is the task mode network, which looks out, and the default mode network, which looks in and can go to daydream if it's not looking in, balance. So there's a feeling that you're seamless and you're equally aware inside and out. And when
that
you're
makes complete sense.
And when you're aware inside and out, there's no problem. Everything is literally, because you're aware, it feels like you're aware from almost a field of awareness, the way that Andrew Newberg, talked about the parietal lobe being less active, and you feel this sense of spaciousness. Then you're aware from that spaciousness of your body inside and out, rather than just looking in at your thoughts from a detached mindful witness. You're actually opening and including in a more flow consciousness, which is the way a musician or an athlete, a point guard on a basketball team is in the flow. He's equally aware inside and out, looking at the audience, the timing, knows the clock, knows where everyone's moving, looks one way and throws it the other way, and it goes, perfectly. So it's highly functional, but relaxed and joyful.
I really like that. We're just to clarify, you're gonna do something live with me, right? A practice. Yeah. So before we do that, though, let's nerd out a little bit about that neuroscience work.
Good.
Because there's a lot of nuance there in the literature that I think doesn't get discussed in popular treatments of the neuroscience of meditation. So Andrew Newberg happens to be a friend and colleague of mine, and we have published papers together on the neuroscience of the creative brain.
Yes.
Like creative geniuses. This is when I worked at Penn with the Imagination Institute. I was scientific director of the Imagination Institute, and we scanned the brains of all these like really imaginative people. And what's really interesting is that when you do that, when you look at the brains of really, really creative people when they're doing like creative tasks and even at rest, their default mode network is on call. I mean, the kinds of cognitions that come from the default mode network can be the greatest source of imagination and creativity. So what I really like the way you framed it. I like the way you framed it as this wonderful calm accessing and flow of the default mode network, as opposed to I've seen some other narratives put forward in saying that it's all about getting rid of it, like cutting it out of the brain. And
it's causing a lot of problems. Right?
Yeah. Like that's like the arch nemesis of meditation is the default mode network.
The default mode network and the ego. Those two.
Yeah,
you gotta get rid of
exactly. Got to get rid of them. And I've been really trying to argue that's a really short-sighted way of viewing the reality of the situation. And so anyway, I'm really glad. I just wanted to double click on that. I really like the way you phrase that, and just just to point out that research I did with Andrew,
Yep.
showing that, or Andy, as we call him, that that actually really creative people, they have they have great attentional flexibility, so they can be so flexible in knowing when it's task appropriate to activate it and when it's task appropriate to maybe inhibit the activity of the default. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other interesting thing is that shamatha, that way of creating calm abiding by doing one-pointed meditation, the research shows that it does repress the default mode network and so it creates calm. So one of the sons of my teacher, Sokni Rinpoche, came to the United States and said, "Why is everyone doing stupid meditation?" Because everyone was doing one-pointed meditation, calling it mindfulness and meditation. And what they're doing is you calm by repressing, and then you're very calm, and it lasts a while. And, it's like a nap or a sauna or it's good. It's not bad, but it doesn't. So then the other most recent study is the EEG, where mindfulness and one-pointedness, you go from beta to alpha. So you go from, beta is kind of everyday mind, chattering mind, and you go to alpha, which is a calmer, quiet state. And then when you do this non-dual meditation, similar to what I'm doing, you actually get synchronized gamma. So synchronized gamma. So gamma, each blip of gamma is like an aha moment. And this is synchronized. So you get that creative mind, you get the calm. So the beta goes to alpha, and then the synchronized gamma comes on. So you're joyous and alert and creative and related. And that's the differences in kind of the neuroscience studies that, deliberate mindfulness or basic mindfulness has very good, qualities and effects, but it's traditionally a preliminary practice leading to effortless mindfulness, which is more about living a plateau experience.
Well, I wonder if we both have been kind of working on a very similar state of consciousness without you just calling it different, having different terms in a different tradition with different teachers, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know if I ever sent you my article for Scientific American on a skeptical scientist mindfulness journey. Did I ever send that article to you?
I've seen it, yeah.
The thing is that made me very skeptical of at least the kind of in the MBSR course, that kind of the controlled form of meditation, is that like my whole graduate work was, a big chunk of it was with Jerome L. Singer, the father of daydreaming. He was one of my advisors, and our work together was to show the benefits of daydreaming, the creative benefits of mind wandering. We distinguish between positive constructive daydreaming and inattentional control. Which is a different, you can have great executive control resources and still have positive constructive daydreaming. They're not at odds with each other.
That's right.
So as I say, you can be deeply focused on your daydreams. Why not? So the thing that, when I would go to this meditation, MBSR, and they would say, when you if your mind wanders, if you're daydreaming, go back to your breath. And the rebel in me wanted to be like, come on, like sometimes my daydreams are good, don't tell me to ignore them. So that was like, anyway, I just bring this up as just to give you a context.
So, and you can see that it literally shows that you're putting on the task mode and you're repressing by doing that practice, which gives you an effect, but is it really an effect that is functionally helpful? I think it's restful, but ultimately it doesn't actually help you even go to the next level of mindfulness. And there's many other ways that I use now, where I use the polyvagal theory of working more with the nervous system, taking breathing in and then breathing out slower, through the mouth, longer and slower. So you take the
Yeah.
sympathetic nervous system and move to the parasympathetic. So you're calming the animal body, and then you let the mind kind of calm down, and then you shift to this awareness. So so it's a different animal. And one of the meditations I actually do is, okay, when your mind wanders, focus on your wandering mind and follow that as your object of meditation. And just stay with that, just as you did your breath. That's it. Just stay with it. Don't stop it. Just follow that wandering mind, and just be attentive, or just be, focused or curious about what's going on with that, without analyzing or, getting involved with the story. And then come back to your breath whenever the journey switches. So you follow it, and that is the alternate. What's happening, in this cycle of neuroscience is the brain is alternating these two systems of going task mode, looking out, then it looks in. So if you're trying to watch your breath, it will go in, and your mind will wander because it's going to default mode. So follow it there, and then follow it back. It's really interesting.
If you've been listening to this show for a while, you've probably heard me talk about my Helix mattress. It's the best mattress I've ever owned, and I've tried quite a few, let me tell you. Helix has left the bedroom though and started making sofas. They just launched a new company called Allform, and they're already making the best sofas available anywhere. So what makes an Allform sofa really cool? For starters, it's the easiest way you can customize a sofa using premium materials, and at a fraction of the cost of traditional stores. You can pick your fabric, and it's spill, stain, and scratch resistant, the sofa color, the color of the legs, sofa size, and shape to make sure it's perfect for you and your home. They've got armchairs and love seats all the way up to an 8-seat sectional, so there's something for everyone. And you can always start small and buy more seats later on if you want your Allform sofa to grow and change when you move. Allform sofas are also delivered directly to your home with fast, free shipping. In the past, if you wanted to order a sofa, it could take weeks or even months to arrive, and you would need someone to come and assemble it in your home. Allform takes just 3 to 7 days to arrive in the mail, and you can assemble it yourself, no tools needed. I have an Allform 6-seat corner sectional with chase in gray, which I use in my living room to watch TV and to chill with friends. It's really comfortable, and it didn't take too long to set up. I really love it. If getting a sofa without trying it in a store sounds a little risky, you don't need to worry. You can get 100 days to decide if you want to keep it. That's more than 3 months. And if you don't love it, they'll pick it up for free and give you a full refund. They even offer a forever warranty, literally forever. To find your perfect sofa, check out allform.com/psychology. Allform is even offering 20% off all orders for our listeners at allform.com/psychology. That's allform.com/psychology. Okay, now back to the show. It seems to me like what you're teaching is actually very, very conducive to creativity and creative flow. I feel like I want to collaborate with you on like linking explicitly your work to the work I've done in creative flow, because it seems now I can see it much more clearer now. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation.
Yeah, and then one of the Judd Brewer has a research paper on this gamma synchrony. So that'll show that it's more creative. I'll send you that.
Please do. Judd, I just spoke with Judd for the podcast, and I actually back channel, I brought together a Zoom call with Judd and my creativity of neuroscience researchers to kind of talk about, get a conversation started on how we can integrate all these different findings in these different fields, like the creativity field and the mindfulness field. So I'm really interested in building those bridges. Yeah. That's
great. Good. So let me give a little prep for this this little practice, and you may have done it in. So the sense of what awake awareness or awareness-based knowing rather than thought-based knowing, which is both prior in a child. It's not exactly primary process versus secondary process, but it's even just the consciousness of a child prior to developing conceptual thinking, and then. So it's something that's awake and aware without using thought to be alert. So what happens then when secondary process thinking happens, we develop thoughts, and then at 1.5 to 3 years old, we develop what's called self-awareness in psychology, which is interesting because what that is the ability to look in a mirror when you have a mark on your nose and realize, oh, that's me. I'm aware of me. And that's the external version of it. But the internal version is something we all know well, but we're not aware of. You better not say that. What are you going to do? Are you going to do this or are you going to do that? So who's the you that's talking to you? That's self-awareness that's aware of your thoughts. It's not mindfulness yet, but it's the way we operate. So that self-referencing that shows up in the PCC of the brain ends up creating this small separate sense of self that feels like it's in our head looking out of our eyes. So it's one kind of constellation of consciousness. And when that ego function, that's supposed to function by saying, what's going on out there? What's going on out here? Is there some danger there? Is there something I need to be aware of here? So it's trying to problem solve all the time. So the function is problem solving. We identify with it, and we're always looking for a problem. So if that constellation of consciousness would relax, we might be able to almost have our awareness open the way Andrew Newberg, longtime meditators, open to this more spacious, alert, awake awareness. So the simple inquiry to understand with your mind and then to let your awareness feel is what's here now when there's no problem to solve. So just understanding the words, letting the problem solver relax, and then let your awareness be aware of what's here. And then just curious, what's it like to rest as that which is here when there's no problem to solve?
I think I'm resting in that space right now.
Yeah.
As you went through that, and it's very interesting because it's I feel a little bit dumb.
Yeah. Well, it's the alternative to chattering mind.
Yeah.
So it's the chattering mind or the ego is going to say that's called dumb. Don't go there.
That was obviously a conceptual label I put on it. But I did that after when I was trying to reflect on it, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
And it can. So there is some kind of, so it's almost like you're moving from trying to clean up the cloud of your identity, and you just let the problem solver relax and then open to the day sky. What's here now when there's no problem to solve? So it's restful. That's the calm. It's non-thought based, so it's not chattery or smart in the usual sense, but it is alert, right? And you could respond, but that's the question. What's it like to not orient to thought and yet be here? What's it like to not be, I think, therefore I am? What's it like to go into be, being?
Yeah. It seems like you associate love, an open-heartedness to this kind of vast, expansive form of consciousness. And do you think that's going to be the case for everyone? Like, I'm so curious with like if you had psychopaths do this practice, like,
right.
I mean, these are obvious questions, I think, but I think they're important questions. Are there people who in their ordinary consciousness don't access the love state quite frequently at all, that you can do some practices with them that they can start to be like, oh, that's what that feels like?
I mean, I haven't had psychopaths, but I have had schizophrenic, bipolar, and interestingly, with people with complex trauma, something I've, explored with them. So these are people who really have not bonded and, have a lot of early trauma. And I'll ask them, okay, is there a part of you, they'll even have suicidal thoughts. Is there a part of you that wants to hurt yourself? And they go, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I said, well, where is that? Well, it's like right here, in my throat, like choking me. And is there a part of you that would like, has come here to kind of feel better or hope that there's some, well, I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess there's a little bit, a little lower than that in my body. And then I'll ask, well, who's aware of those two parts?
Mm.
And they'll go, well, I am. And I'll say, well, where are you? Well, I'm the one that's aware of the other two parts of me, and I'm here. I'm like everywhere. I'm the real me, So they'll open to this spacious, pervasive kind of, and it has this welcoming quality. So it's not like necessarily bliss love, but it's not a neutral. It can start neutral in the practices like what's here now and there's no problem to solve. There can be kind of an alert awareness that's awake, but then if you ask, well, then what does it feel like to be aware from here of your body and the world? You'll start to kind of drop and feel the safety and connection. And once you feel the connection from the awareness based knowing, so that it feels almost like an ocean and wave, rather than a small separate self looking out of your eyes from the middle of your head that's constantly worried. You feel this non-fear, non-worry. So it's really what a peak experience is like, but you can, when you intentionally do it through this non-dual meditation, you start to learn what the consciousness constructs are, or what the station you're tuning into. So you tune out of that chattering mind or that emotional contraction into this more spacious and then embracing or pervasive, open mind or open heart. And you just feel like you're something greater than yourself that is yourself. And so this can be done intentionally, and people are, both in therapy and in meditation or in flow consciousness while you're walking or just doing an activity.
I hear you, and it just makes me think that, and this might sound a bit cheeky, but I think you'll really resonate with it. It's funny, we use the word transcendence, but this feels like the opposite of transcendence. This feels like, and there's no word for that. Like, what is the exact descendance? Anyway, maybe that is what it is. Descendants. Yeah. You're descending. I'm trying to grasp for a lexicon to describe what this is, because it's not like you're, transcending the ego. That's not the right narrative here. No. It's like you're descending into your being. It's like you're getting so much in touch with your being itself, like pure, like Maslow called it pure being.
Yeah, pure being. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are some terms of the, transcend and include, or fully divine and fully human, or in Tibet they say the inseparable pair of awareness and aliveness. So there's, that's the magic move of this non-dual practice that isn't. So even a mindful witness, that's just an open awareness that's watching things come and go, is a detached observer. It's not embodied. Mm-hmm. It's a separate witness consciousness, whereas this is embodied and interconnected. So that's the move. So I call it waking up from the ego, waking to the awake awareness, waking as the awareness and aliveness, and then waking in, and then waking out to create and relate. So it's a multiple, and if you only stop halfway, if you just transcend and stop at selflessness or no self, you may stumble into this, but you also, like Willoughby Britton's studies at Brown with people who are doing 5-day retreats, that she said something like 30 to 40% of them will get flooded by their unconscious. Because if you deconstruct without finding the solution, which is the awareness embodied true nature, so self with a capital S, then you've just taken away not only the ego but the ego defenses.
Yeah, this is quite different than like witness consciousness, which is which is all the rage in a lot of these mindfulness training sessions. And I think the point here is not that like we're hating on that. That's not the point at all. It's that there's a step further that people might not be aware of. That's funny to even say that, might not be aware of, but there's a step or a few steps further that can take you more into the I think really where you can really tap into your creative juices that are just so naturally there already. I really like this. I really do. Have you worked with people who suffer from ADD? In the sense that they feel like they cannot, they can't make decisions. They're paralyzed by their inability to make a decision, to concentrate on a task for more than a couple minutes. It's in most extreme cases.
Yes.
How do you work with these kinds of individuals using these approaches?
So I call it, instead of attention deficit disorder, I call it attention overload disorder. So in other words, they're trying so hard to use their attention to do it that it's overloaded. So
yeah.
So the thing is, the attention can't do it. So this method of non-dual mindfulness is upgrading to a spacious awareness. So you literally can feel like your awareness drops from thinking to seeing, and then goes to hearing, and then opens to this space in the room. And then the feeling is, all right, are you aware of the open view, or are you aware from the open view? And now can you focus on your breath, and can you focus on the keyboard? So while you're kind of still open and embodied and connected.
Of versus from.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Skillshare. It's important to find avenues for creative expression and curiosity during these uncertain times. No matter what this year has in store, you can make the most of your free time by exploring a new hobby or revisiting an old one by taking a class with Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of fascinating classes for creative and curious people, just like the listeners of the Psychology Podcast. There's so much to explore, real projects for you to create, and support from like-minded creatives. The platform allows you to connect with a community of millions of people, and the lessons can help you stay inspired and engaged in exciting projects. There are a variety of topics you can choose from. My creative listeners may be interested in photography, music production, film and video, and web development. Lately, I've been enjoying Thomas Frank's class on productivity for creatives, where I'm learning to build inspiration like it's a muscle. Bring color and beauty and fun to your year, and add vivid details and craft complex wonders. Skillshare happens to be incredibly affordable, especially when compared to pricey in-person classes and workshops. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month. Today we have a special offer just for listeners of the Psychology Podcast. Explore your creativity at Skillshare.com/psych and get a free trial of premium membership. Again, explore your creativity at Skillshare.com/psych and get a free trial of premium membership. That's Skillshare.com/psych. I understand the of, but okay, what's the from?
So that's, that is the peak. That's one of the markers of a peak experience. That's Andrew Newberg's marker for the Buddhist and the Christian is the parietal lobe relaxes from being aware from your body, and their feeling is that you're aware from an open mind or a flow consciousness, which is interconnected or is aware from a little more boundless feeling of where your mind is. So it just has a little more open mind, open heart, and you're aware from there. So you're not aware from this point of view in your head. You're kind of dropped, opened, and then aware from this kind of field or feeling. And it's what you feel when you walk into the woods, or you, even when you drive a car. You can't drive from a pinpoint. I mean, you see people doing it. They're like looking over, but you have
They
to
do
go
it.
in. You have to. So one of my practices is to let your eyes rest and realize that hearing is receiving, right? Hearing sound comes from outside and comes to their ears, but seeing is also receiving. Light reflects off of objects and comes to your eyes. So,
does this relate to you talk about local awareness? Yeah. Is this related to that? Yeah.
So the ADD practice is so that explains local awareness. So the spacious or awake awareness is when you shift the center from your thoughts to your seeing to your hearing to more spacious awareness. And now when you focus on your breath or a task from awake awareness, you're not using attention. In fact, in flow consciousness, they talk about hypofrontality, which means when you're in flow, you're not using your frontal attentional system. You're using your more of a whole brain, and what it feels like is you're aware from an open, interconnected space. So what it is literally, maybe just, the parietal lobe is less intense, so it feels more open. But whatever that is, you don't have to explain it, or how can you be aware from an open space? It's like, what does it feel like? Oh, it feels vast or open or connected. Okay, so then you've just shifted your consciousness. And now focus from here on typing. Oh my God, people will say. So I've worked with kids with ADD. I have a little ADD. I've had it. I played sports and I did this. So receiving light in your eyes now. So then just let your eyes rest and receive, and then just don't move your eyes, but begin to open awareness up so that your peripheral vision starts to follow. Don't strain, but take your time. And breathe in and smile, look up. So you get little endorphins, and you get this safety, which is when you're looking up, your brain is saying it's safe. Open your awareness up. And when it gets to the side, just let somehow your awareness continue around to the sides in which sound is going, and then just somehow it feels like awareness continues around 360 degrees. So you feel like you've opened your view, and then you're aware as this open field of awareness that's equally inside and out, and from this open awareness. And now when you focus on something like your breath, you're not using attention, you're using local awareness, which just kind of makes it light up from the field. You're aware, it feels like you're aware from this open field of awareness, embodied awareness. And then your breath it's actually, you almost feel like you're aware from all around and from your stomach. When you're aware of your breath, you don't have to establish this attentional, dualistic point of view. And that's kind of the mystical, it's what Maslow has called the peaks. No.
Yeah. Well, let's start linking a bunch of this to Maslow. Okay. But not just Maslow, but also, dare I say, Kaufman, because I have new stuff. I have new stuff.
Oh, good.
No, but there's a quote from Maslow. He says, "I think of the self-actualizing man not as an ordinary man with something added, but rather as the ordinary man with nothing taken away." Yeah. As you're talking, it seems like this is very much in line with his way of thinking about self-actualization. As again, I keep going back to it's like not transcendence. It's like it's descendants,
descendants, or inclusion, or waking in rather than waking up.
Waking in, at tuning in to. But also unlearning. It's like
it's unlearning that secondary process thinking.
Yeah.
If that's you.
Well, even Freud would have liked this shit.
He had evenly hovering attention.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. Yeah, I mean, primary, secondary thought process, thought
So
thinking.
This is tertiary process, is what I call it. So awake
Yeah,
awareness is tertiary process knowing.
that makes a lot of sense. I like that. I really do like that. So let's link this to the plateau state of consciousness.
Yeah.
Because this is what Maslow. This was his unfinished symphony,
Yes.
and
exactly.
that I've been trying to take the baton and move forward.
I'm with you on this one. I love it.
So U.A. Asrani talked a lot about this state of consciousness. Now, many people have not heard of U.A. Asrani, but I think he's an East Indian mystic. Have you ever encountered him? Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah. I've heard of him. I remember reading him at one point, but I never studied him or.
Yeah, he's not as as popular as and well known as. But Maslow was very captivated by his writings on the plateau experience, and so he co-opted that term. And I have, I mean, I'd love to share with you. I have letters between the two whereas he sends Asrani his papers on the plateau experience, and Asrani gives him like 40-point point by point critique, and it's just beautiful. It's beautiful dialogue that they had about this, that just in letters. But this state of consciousness is being able to see the miraculous in the everyday, and to kind of Maslow, he said it's like lounging in heaven, not getting so excited about it.
Right, that's right. It's heaven on earth.
Yeah,
it's as if heaven, and it's as if you're not getting rid of anything. So pleasant and unpleasant experiences are just the human experience, and it becomes not about what's here, but what it's arising to. So what it's arising to is what changes. So nothing needs to be gotten rid of or taken away.
Right.
It's just you're shifting your view.
And this ties in so much with all my research on openness to experience, as and the person, it's a personality trait, but it's also a state.
Yes.
And this notion of Maslow called it newness of appreciation.
Right.
Being able to have gratitude for what you see over and over again every single day, and constantly awakening to the newness of that. Right. It seems like all this is just so strongly tied to your project.
Here's my take on what the plateau, how the peak and the plateau differ, because a peak experience is almost like it's happening to you. So it's almost like a high. It could be drug-induced. It could be love-induced through sex or through intense state of nature. But the plateau means that the ground of being, or you've discovered the essential self that has its own natural qualities that can't be perturbed. So it's no longer, it's not a state, it's not even a trait, it's a stage, or it's actually even more of an identity, like your essential identity that's been revealed that you're now aware from. So first it would peek through, P-E-E-K, as a kind of a moment, but then you realize, it's just in the background, it's already installed, but it's covered over by this fast-moving, constellation of consciousness, ego-centeredness, secondary process, functioning. And then as soon as that relaxes, nothing needs to be gotten rid of. It just comes forward, and its background becomes foreground, and then becomes all ground.
I love it. Hey everyone, I'm excited to announce that the 8-week online Transcend course is back. This iteration of the course, which will run from September 5th to October 24th of this year, will use science to help you live a more fulfilling, meaningful, creative, and self-actualized life. There will be limited slots available, so save your spot as soon as possible. In addition to the regular class pricing, we're also offering limited slots for personal self-actualization coaching. Save your spot today by going to transcendcourse.com. That's transcendcourse.com. The Transcend course is just one of the offerings of the brand new Center for the Science of Human Potential. The Center for the Science of Human Potential's mission is to use science to help each person fulfill their highest potential and contribute to the good of society. Toward that goal, we offer classes, coaching, and consulting opportunities to help people apply the latest science to help themselves, their organizations, their schools, their families, and their communities to be more creative, loving, and full of transcendent possibilities. For more on the center, you can go to scienceofhumanpotential.com. Hey everyone, doing this podcast for y'all is one of my greatest privileges, but the costs of maintaining a professional production like this one really adds up. I'm grateful to today's sponsors who help fund the show, but if you prefer a completely ad-free experience, you can join us at patreon.com/psychpodcast. You'll get completely ad-free episodes, all while directly supporting the show for as little as $5 a month. That's patreon.com/psychpodcast. And it's the only thing that's tripping me up here is you still use the word identity, like the identity. What does identity mean in that context? Because Maslow thought transcendence was a big part of it was transcending identity.
This is kind of one of the more important things where normal psychology, Maslow, meditative consciousness, and non-dual theory can all meet. So, so the normal psychology is either that there's an ego or a small center of self, and that you're trying to make it healthy, a healthy ego, and you want work and love and functional, good life that's not overwhelmed by emotion and that lives in society. But then the smarter you get, the more neurotic or the more anxious or the more uptight, or you end up in a role. You end up kind of shutting yourself. Well, hello there. Nice to see you. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm very successful. Like you get caught in some either a tight role or too loose. You're either too much energy and you're anxious, or you've repressed too much and you're depressed because the small ego identity can't really handle a fully intimate human life. It's always kind of shutting the battery down or becoming a workaholic, or it's self-referencing so much it doesn't feel bliss or pleasure because it's, can't get what it wants because it thinks it's out there. So it goes to addiction or, something like that. So self-transcendence is an attempt to say, okay, the problem is this limited sense of identity. Okay, it's not what you're feeling, it's who's feeling it. So whether it's Maslow or Buddhism, so the first schools of Buddhism say, we're going to deconstruct it and we're going to look and see that it actually isn't, there's no solid self, there's just thoughts, feelings, sensations coming and going. But then they don't say what else there is. So you end up sitting in a monastery watching your thoughts or you kid yourself because once you get off the cushion, you have a calmer ego. But so that what Tibetan Buddhism and this North Indian Mahamudra says is, okay, there's the small self, then there's the no self, then there's the true nature. So there is an operating system that isn't the small self, but it's not just the absence. That it has actually, it relieves suffering and it reveals natural positive qualities. Mm-hmm. So that's the system that I'm working with. So even the way I do it myself and the way I teach my students is, let's not spend a lot of time deconstructing or in the transitional no self or selflessness. Step out and then into that which wakes back in and is interconnected. And feel that. Now include your emotions or anything else, or chattering mind, and what do you notice? And so the key for me is in self-transcendence or self-inclusion is you've got to have definition of what there is besides the small self. Otherwise, you end up just making them qualities of the small self. Oh, there's more joy. Oh, there's more awe. Or there's more. Oh, now I have more. Well, who does? Oh, is it that small self? No, I've transcended it. Well, then who are you, or where are you, or what are you? Oh, well, I transcended. I don't know. So the Tibetan system is willing to say there is this nature of mind, this true nature, that does have a feeling that's spacious, pervasive, interconnected. And when you feel like it, you feel like, oh, this is me. This includes everything and nothing's threatening. And yet I'm a unique individual and I'm connected to everyone. And that's who I am. That's essentially who I am. And then I have imperfect stuff that's still coming up from childhood or from, just not knowing stuff or whatever emotions, are happening based on who you are. But there's a new operating system rather than just the absence of the old.
But what's the identity there? What is the identity of that operating system?
So one of the metaphors is you are a wave in the ocean of reality. So there's a very unique individual here, but I'm connected through the ocean to everyone and everything. So I'm essentially
nice. It's like a sailboat metaphor, perhaps.
Yeah, but you're not an individual sailboat that can sing.
I know.
But that's the key, is that you feel like you're this unique creation that has an expression and a shine and a sparkle to it. But it's not either or. That's the key. It's not. It's like, oh, am I somebody or am I nobody? It's like, no, you are an individual, but you're not separate. So the word emptiness, which is often misunderstood or kind of defined in a limited way in Buddhism, people say, oh, emptiness means there's no self, so you're empty. So it's like a void. But what the word means is that you're empty of a separate self-nature. So it means that a tree, there's no such thing as a tree in itself without water, sun, earth, and air. So a tree is empty of being a separate self, therefore it's interdependent, therefore emptiness means interconnected.
Well, this is very, very, very relevant to the way I even define self-transcendence as more horizontal than vertical, and that's definitely how I've been thinking about it. That's what I call healthy transcendence at the very least. But there's a lot of spiritual narcissism going around these days. I wrote an article about that as well. There's a lot of this I'm enlightened and you're not effect in psychology that can happen when someone has a certain amount of hours of practice. They start to think, well, I'm more awake than you are, But no.
The first premise is everyone's already awake. It's just we don't know it. So it's like a game of hide and seek.
Yeah.
And so the awakeness is our essential nature, and it's just covered over. And so you're not doing anything if you happen to, the awakeness happens to peek through and become more essential. You didn't do anything. You're not as special. You're just, say, come on, let's play hide and seek. Come on out. So that's the feeling, is like, come on in the pool. The water's great. Let's go.
Yeah. There's so much part of, I'm hearing you and I'm saying, this makes complete sense. But then there's also the individual differences psychologist in me that's trying to see how we can integrate the idea that people's essential nature do differ from one person to the next in terms of their genetic temperament, in terms of their talents, in terms of their life background, their experiences, their memories. So, where does that come into the fold? I do think there's a domain generality, but also a domain specificity. There are things that make us unique. There are things that we can tap into, we tap into a universal nature for sure as well. Yeah. I think there's perhaps both.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's not either or. It's always both. And so part of that sense of what is the root of suffering, what's the existential root, is not realizing your plateau or your peak or your sense of universal nature that's here. It's like here, it's not universal like, whoa, like
right.
It's this. It's this universal that's particular. And then
That's
each
right.
particular person is just, they're just who they are. And then there's, things, to learn and to grow and to develop that need psychological help too, that can really be helpful.
I gotcha, Loch. I gotcha.
Yeah.
I think we should end our conversation today on this note, but with a caveat of to be continued,
Yes.
because this is really elucidating for me. I think I get it. And I see its relevance to a lot of things. My brain is gonna be brimming. I know that I'm probably not even gonna sleep tonight because I'll be thinking about it, which is which is not the state that you're referring to. So I need to maybe do your guided meditation to get to bed. But no, I get it. But I also am a nerd, and I also do like to think deeply about things, even in an effortful way sometimes. I think that the key here is to know, be able to have the capacity to tap into those, the beauty and riches of this pure being that we're talking about, and also know when maybe it's not the most appropriate time in one's life to tap into that. or
to tap into being and then do from being. That's
good
the thing.
too.
You start to do from being, and then everything, becomes like that. And when you bumble along at certain things, you're not so good at it, but it's better than beating yourself up.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my brain, my head really is brimming. I'm thinking about lots of things. I'm thinking about you said you apply this in your psychotherapy practice, and I'm trying to compare and contrast this versus like the CBT approach. I mean, maybe CBT is just going about it all wrong. It's like the opposite. It's going down a different alley. It's going down This is different. It's different, and it's in a lot of ways, I think it's more in line with Stephen Hayes and his approach in acceptance and commitment therapy. And maybe even some of Stephen's critiques. If you ever get a chance to listen to him on my podcast, because he critiques CBT a little bit as a little too in your head, a little too cognitive, and saying like, well, why do you have to wait to change your thoughts and all this when you can just tap into what's already there? And I think that's in a lot of ways similar to some of what you're saying. So look, Loch, I just really appreciate you coming on my podcast today, and like I said, to be continued, because you brought up a lot of stuff. I think we're on the same adventure together, and I think we can help each other and bring a lot of this languaging together of our different experiences. For sure. Great. Thanks, Loch. All right, thanks so much, Scott. Great to see you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Psychology Podcast. If you'd like to react in some way to something you heard, I encourage you to join in the discussion at thepsychologypodcast.com. That's thepsychologypodcast.com. Also, if you'd prefer a completely ad-free experience, you can join us at patreon.com/psychpodcast. Thanks for being such a great supporter of the show, and tune in next time for more on the mind, brain, behavior, and creativity.